Hello.
Hey there, VBATs. Long time no see.
No, I've actually I've had since whenever March or something like that, a conflicting meeting at the same spot for something I'm a stakeholder in. So, good to see everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Oh, I guess I didn't sign in as a moderator. Does it matter?
We've been pretty trouble-free lately.
Good.
It auto records, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought so, but it doesn't show like it. I have a button to start the recording here.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
recording
Yeah.
for me,
It says recording for you. Cool.
I think.
I thought it did, but I've got the record button too.
Maybe it's just recording me.
Maybe you should sign in and set that up. Turn it
Yeah,
on.
1 second.
I'm so used to meetings recording, I forget when they aren't.
So I got back on IRC today.
How is it back there? I haven't been over in long.
Whole different vibe. What's up?
Long time no see.
Nope.
Your sign
asked
didn't
for-
work?
It emailed a passcode or a token to an address that I don't manage. So,
No.
Good luck.
Well, everybody just remember exactly what I say, and then we don't need the recording. I'll go ahead and do some screen sharing then. Let's kick this thing off. And of course, I want to be able to see all the conversations. So let me get the chat, everything open up. Because if I don't, people will start putting all the cool stuff in the chat when I'm not paying attention. So yeah, the working group's been busy. And we settled on proposal E, in case that wasn't clear from some of the other earlier discussions. And E is kind of a combination of a bunch of couple different proposals out there where we're looking at putting putting a reference in the manifest itself so that we can query the stuff with an API, but also have for existing registries today, have some kind of fallback plan. And so we kind of got a little bit of a combination of different ideas wrapped in here. And so we do have a new media type for future use cases. So there is a new artifact media type that we have proposed. The refers field in here is available, and that's what the API that we're going to propose uses. It's got an artifact type field. And so that's used. We're looking at the media type from the config descriptor on the existing image manifest. And we also have an artifact media type or artifact field on the artifact manifest. And so we can look at that. And then we've got the API. So that's kind of the long term where we want to get to. And we've got an upgrade path that we're also looking at. And so the idea is that for registries that don't have this API today, they don't have the new media type, you can still push the existing image manifest the way that the OCI artifact defines it with a custom media type for the config. And you would need to also push up the resulting response that you're kind of expect from the API. And so I'll show how that works in a bit. And once registries do upgrade, you can start querying that registry API, and it handles a lot of the stuff that we would normally be pushing off to the client. And that eliminates the race conditions, eliminates a lot of different issues of maintaining the stuff, garbage collection. That all gets moved into the registry at that point, which is like a lot cleaner solution for us to work with. And then once everybody's upgraded and you're not worried about portability of your artifact of going to older registries, you can start using the newer artifact media types we've proposed. So that's kind of the high level. And we've got some schema changes in JSON in terms of like annotations that we're adding. We've got the new artifact spec here. Let's see, the annotations, we've got descriptions and created. So we're going to propose we add those. I don't think we actually made that into the PR, so we need to include those in the PR. And then some other ideas, potentially you might want to add these in the future. This was just kind of a call out, something to think about for OCI in general. But the important part, once we add the new manifest, is kind of how we work with them. So I'll go through the two manifest. The new manifest is OCI Artifact Manifest. And with that, we're going to have an artifact type that's going to be included in there and an array of blobs. And so it looks fairly similar to an image manifest. We've changed layers to blobs. We got rid of the config and we pulled up that media type from the config up to the top level. But otherwise, it's fairly similar. The big difference is because it's a different media type altogether. One, the config is no longer really required. So that eliminates an extra bit of complication I think people are having with this of pushing up a separate blob for the config blob. And we don't say that the blob order matters, where when you look at the layers in the existing spec, they all say that the order is very important. So we kind of eliminate those two challenges. And it's also an optional list. If you have 0 blobs, you can push that up, where I think we say that you need to have at least some layers in your image. So that's kind of the difference between the two. The other thing we're doing is we have the refers. So this says I am referring to another, and that's kind of the big reason the working group was created, was to be able to say, okay, how do you refer to another manifest? How do you extend another image? And any annotations you throw in there. Once you do that, you can then call the refers API. And so we kind of said refers is kind of the field you put inside of your manifest. And if you want to say, okay, find this digest out there, this A1, whatever, tell me everything that points to that digest, you can call the referers API with that A1 digest, and it'll come back and say, oh, I've got this manifest over here that's pointing to it, give you that list of descriptors. And the way we return a list of descriptors, OCI likes that pretty easily. We just use the index. Just return an index with a list of manifest in there. The interesting part about this is automatically generated. And so this would be hopefully an automatically generated list on the registry. Well, since it's an API response, it isn't an automatically generated index on the registry. We are pulling up. So you're going to have the media type from whatever you're looking at and the digest and the size. That part's pretty normal. We're going to pull up whatever the artifact type is from the manifest that we're pointing to. And we're also going to pull up the annotations. And so if you have any annotations down there, those get pulled up. And then let's see. That is if you've got the API. So it'll just give you that response. And so you can query that and see, okay, for my given image, tell me all the SBOMs, all the signatures, everything else that refer to this one so that I can go find them and pull them as needed. And because you've got all the annotations, you can then do client-side filtering and figure out, okay, this is the one I want to get. That one's not important to me. You can figure out and pick and choose which ones you want to pull back and retrieve. We've also got some ideas in here for pagination. So if you need to have more than one OCI index, I think it's going to be an extreme case. When we're kind of looking at the numbers, we're going to have like thousands of potential descriptors you can put in there as long as people are well behaved, not throwing a whole bunch of stuff in their annotations. But if the worst were to happen, somebody threw a whole bunch of annotations out there, put a giant descriptor that just filled everything up, we do have the ability to have multiple indexes returned from the API. Not from the fallback, but at least from the API. And then we define some filtering options in there. At least for right now, it's just the one filtering option, which is you can pass an artifact type. And if you say, I want this one specific artifact type, the registry will come back and say, I've got the responses that have the artifact type filter applied, and only those entries with that artifact type are returned to you and nothing else. Which will help clients that want to say, I'm a client, I only care about my one artifact type. I don't care about all these other artifact types that are out there. It can filter on just its things. That's the long-term way we want to get to. Knowing that we're not going to get there on day one, we do have a digest tag out there as kind of a fallback. And so clients that say, hey, I'm trying to check this API on an artifact I was pushed up, the API is giving me back a 404. So clearly this registry is a 1.0 registry. It hadn't been upgraded to the newest spec. I don't need to fall back and manage this tag. And this tag is the digest of the thing you're referring to. And so you push up your manifest, you've got a refers field in your manifest. You now need to go and look for this if you don't have the API and update it or create it. And the content of this is exactly what you would see back from the content of any of what we were looking at above. So exact same image manifest. It's just now managed from the client instead of managed from the server. Because of that, we've got a description here for when the registry server needs to upgrade. So when the registry server itself is changing from with versus without, we kind of go through and describe, okay, well, you need to go through and look at everybody that's already got one of these. And yeah, any existing image or other thing that's referenced by one of those digest tags, you need to import those and any new manifest that comes up afterwards. The idea we're looking at here is we don't want to make it too painful for a massive registry. It's got a whole lot of data out there. We don't want to make them have to scan every single manifest that they have ever imported. I think that would be a little bit onerous on something like a Docker Hub or one of the other big cloud registries out there. And so we're saying if it's got one of these digest tags that the client would have pushed down here, then scan that, get the contents from that in there so that a client that's looking for, does the API exist? When the API does exist, it doesn't have to fall back and also look at the digest tag what exists. The client just says it's A or B. Either the API exists or it doesn't exist. And so it either is managing the digest tag or it's not. And to do that, the server needs to work with it as well of saying, okay, if I'm going to enable that API, I need to have pulled in everything that was in that digest tag previously to my API being available. And then, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of other descriptions in here, portability thoughts, garbage collection thoughts, that kind of stuff. This was all in our proposal. The end result for people like pictures, I feel like a lot of people like pictures, is that we're going to have, you might have a multi-platform image out there that's got a tag pointing to it. It's going to have its manifest for something like your image, its config, its layers, all that stuff. And now you're going to have maybe an SBOM, maybe a signature pointing back to that. And so it's got a refers field inside of this that's pointing back to that manifest. And if the API exists, then you'll query, you'll get this OCI index. They'll give you back these things whenever you say, I pulled this image here, tell me everything it points to it, and you can query that. If the API doesn't exist, you can fall back and say, give me the tag. That'll have the same index there that gives that list. And the question is whether or not it's going to be managed by the server or the client, just based off whether or not it's the tag or the API response. So far, so good. Any questions, throw them out there. Feel free to interrupt. I feel like we got a lot of people in here that have been working on the working group for a long while, plus a few new faces. So anybody's new, feel free to jump in.
I've got a question about the pagination.
Yeah.
So you said you can, if it's going to be like a large number of results, you would just break it and return multiple objects back. How does that work if you were like trying to sign an artifact like this?
So you can't sign the API result. You would have the signature inside of your manifest itself or the signature on your manifest. So this is a dynamically generated list that you're not going to sign this itself. But the thing that points to, either maybe this thing you're signing, so if this is an SBOM, you would have a signature on that itself.
Yeah, I'm just thinking there's not going to be a scenario where you would want to have like a signed copy of the OCI index on disk somewhere for someone. It's like maybe like a backup or something, right?
Because this one is assumed to be generated dynamically from an API response, considered ephemeral. You don't even care what the digest of this is. The thing you care about is the individual artifacts you're pushing. And so the individual artifacts, if you have an SBOM, you want to sign the SBOM, that's going to happen at this level. And so this is going to be the one consistent image down here that you're going to use.
Yeah, I want to think about like the implications of trust for that, because then you're kind of going to the registry and saying like the registry could lie, give you a different type of index pointing to all different images and all kinds of things. But I think I just
It
need to think
absolutely-
about it more.
Yeah, it absolutely can. It could also allow if you say, give me V2 and it comes back with a different index than what the V2 index really is. And so the sighing is going to happen on this index here, this over here, you know, these things. You're kind of assuming once you get above that you're not signing the tag itself, you're signing the index. You're not signing this index here, you're signing this manifest.
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, and it's an image digest. It's not a digest of the index that you query to get the OCI index. Okay.
Yeah, this refers here is saying I'm from this image here referring to this image over here. And so this is going to be a digest, or yeah, this is it is a digest, it is a SHA-256. So if we look at
Yeah,
those,
I was talking more about like the tag and digest queries into the API that then give you, the top two in the center.
yeah, these two.
Yeah, I was looking at those. Yeah,
yeah.
those are the image, referring to the image, and not a SHA of the OCI index itself. That's just that makes sense.
Yeah, and this, like I say, this is dynamic, it's changing, and the trust in there, keep in mind clients can overwrite. The reason we really want to get to the registries having the API is because different clients, if they start screwing up each other, this kind of gets clobbered. And so we really hope that by defining this as best we can within the spec, that clients will cooperate and be nice to each other.
Cool. This all makes sense to me. Looks really good.
All right. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I can go through some of the pull requests we've got sitting out. Pull requests themselves, we got a whole lot of merges or a whole lot of commits because a bunch of people have been working on it. The changes themselves, we've got changes to the README because we changed a few things in here. So this is going to be the distribution spec. We got one for distribution spec, one for image spec. In distribution spec, we actually add a new file out there called client implementation. And the idea of this is for clients that are implementing this on the client side, they need to know how to work with a registry, whether it is a 1.0 versus, I'm assuming we're going to be like a 1.1, something like that for the distribution spec. Once you get to 1.1, you'll have the new API calls and the clients can use those. But if you have a client that knows how to use this stuff that talks to a 1.0 registry, this is documenting the fallback. This is documenting, okay, you've got that tag schema sitting out there. How do you push it? When do you push it? How do you maintain it? We documented that within the client implementation. So that's documented over there. How to list, how to delete something that was pointing to something else. Bunch of different scenarios there. The spec itself, we then add another section into, let's see, pulling a manifest or pushing a manifest. We had to document that, hey, if you've got a refers field in there, go check out the client implementation because you need to worry about, does this API exist or not? Because if the API doesn't exist and you push something with a refers field, you're now responsible for maintaining that digest tag. On the content discovery side, we now have the listing refers section. And this documents the new API that we added, including, you know, you call it, you say, go V2 within the name /refers and the digest that you want to pull. And if you do that, you get back this thing. And we documented here what it must look like. If you have no refers at all that you are going to return, you need to return empty list, not a 404, because the client needs to be able to differentiate between the server has the API or there's no results in the API. And so we say, don't give a 404 if you've got this API on the server. And then, yeah, you get back the response there. We document the link. That goes back to an RFC. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We just said, hey, just use the RFC to document that link header and use the next field in there. And let's see, the artifact type, we defined how to do the filtering on the artifact type. Got the other API there. Dan, you got a question? Nope. Okay. I see people come off mute to get my attention. Let's see. And let's see, sample for filtering. We've got it sitting out there for, if you've got the example SBOM, you query that one. This is the above example here. We talked about, you can query the signature and the SBOM artifact type. And if you ran this same query to the same request and said, just give me the SBOM, it will come back and say, okay, Here's a response with just the SBOM. Other than that, we add a new API down there, and since we had to go AB, everything got indented. And so we got these two added to the bottom. And then we have the upgrade documentation for registries saying, hey, if you're a registry, you must include any pre-existing images that had that digest tag. And we kind of point over to what the digest tag is. We said, hey, go over, look at the client implementation for how that looks. If anybody pushed that and you add this new API, you must include those. You may, if you want to, include everything. So if you're a small registry and you just want to scan everything, go for it. More power to you. And from that point forward, any new manifest that was pushed needs to be included. So that covers distribution spec. So far, so good. Questions, feel free to interrupt. The other half of this is the image spec. And so for image spec, let's see. We've got the new annotation. Like I say, I think I've got a few other annotations I might need to add to that from our spec. We wanted to include a few more. They weren't important for this, but they're nice to haves. We've got the description of the new artifact that we're pushing up there. And so it's got a media type, it's got the artifact type, it's got blobs. In this, it's a must that you include the media type. We wanted to avoid the CVE that we experienced a while back. And so we just start off day one, media type is a must. Artifact type is a should. We think you probably should include one of those, but if someone doesn't, we didn't want to call that a spec, not a violation of the spec if you don't do it. Blobs are optional, refers are optional, annotations are optional. And then we document, a few annotations that people should be doing. Okay, we document those. Cool. And let's see here. And then for filtering. So let me go down to the filtering. Sample artifact type. And then we use ice cream and then I changed the sample. No, we did keep using ice cream. Okay, I thought we changed the sample. We've got the manifest, our refers, and annotation. So I think, if you missed it the first time, here it is for the third time. So far, so good. I'm going to get repetitive here at this point because we've already looked at the field. We've looked at the picture. On the descriptor, I'm forgetting what exactly we changed here. I'm not sure why. Oh, I changed lines because I changed the stars to dashes. I was just doing a markdown, keeping things clean. We did say that we have an optional artifact type. And then let's see. I think we got a lot of other just repetition in here. The artifact type is going by the IANA media type. We point over the descriptors there for the artifact media type. And then we have, I think, a bunch of validation, other things in there in terms of pulling in the various specs and updates in there. Any questions? I think that is all of it.
Yeah, and there's a number of other things. We had distribution conformance tests and JSON schema for image spec, but we decided to hold back so that this can be reviewed.
We at least got the Go spec in there. I think we held off on the actual implementation of the checks, but the spec itself is there.
And for people who haven't been involved or are watching this later, if you're interested, like the rationale for all of this, if you go to the wg-reference-types repo, yeah, you can see kind of the discussion history, and also, Brandon, if you want to open up proposals folder. Yeah, so A, B, C, D, and F were ones that we have passed on. So If you're wondering why we did or didn't do certain things, these were the other things that were considered.
Got a long list of issues out there. We did like various votes to say, which way do we want to go? People gave their opinions. We kind of thought things over and then based off of that, picked our directions. Cool. Well, if there are no questions, I will stop sharing. So I think the next part is next steps.
Brandon, I just would like to say you did a really fantastic job of walking through that. Thank you very much. Very clear, articulated it very nicely. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like the big next steps here is we've got 2 PR sitting out there. We definitely got, I'm sure, enough people that can vote and say we want to merge this, but also want to be respectful that this is a lot to throw on people all at once and give folks enough time to digest it and make sure they're ready for it. Are there any concerns from people that need to implement this on either side, registry or client? Nisha?
Oh,
If you take the mute off, I'm going to call on you.
I just want to follow up with, is there any way that we can get more feedback about implementing this from the folks who are actually going to implement this? So I understand that it's a lot of information, and we don't necessarily have like enough implementers in all of the forums to be able to say like, yes, everybody agrees with this, let's ship it. And I think that's kind of the place where we're struggling.
Well, I mean, if it's, I guess, that's like jumping into the reviews, like the next step. If the folks if merging this today doesn't break current implementations, and like, I heard from what Brandon just said of that there's like effectively a sniff test that you can see that there's an API upgrade path available of like, oh, the registry does support it and you can like do that, then like there have been, in the past, the registries that see value in, implementing this because it enables them to do stuff like a number of us have talked about, or because their customers are asking for it. In the meantime, they could have a registry that implementation that just languishes. Then that's kind of on them. But as long as it's like not breaking anything, then I don't see that as a particular problem.
The other thing is it's not set in stone once it's merged, right? We can merge it, have implementers implement it, and then if we realize that there's any issues or anything needs to be changed, that can happen before we cut an official release of the spec as well.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add too is that there is a fork that I think it started with ORUS stuff that is implementing this of distribution, and I'm not so sure about ORUS client. Jason, who's not here, who's starting to work on GGCR support. So, and then Brandon has the Reg client project. So there are a few things already starting to do this. I think Zot, I'm not sure if Zot has yet, but.
Yeah, they probably need an update from the previous API.
So I think that's just a suitable way of building momentum. And if the elephant in the room is like, well, Docker support it, then who knows?
The comment we got back, we proposed to them and said, hey, give us feedback. And they understood that we were looking for rapid feedback. Didn't hear a no. What they're looking at right now is they are going to add support for artifacts proper in terms of not filtering on that config media type anymore. So they may not support the full API on day one, but they'll at least stop blocking those custom media types on the config. Once that happens, the fallback solution works on Docker Hub, which I think is at least a minimum viable product for them.
It is worth mentioning that the folks from Docker did author proposal F. So they were part of the discussions.
Yeah, they authored F, and the place E got to isn't that far from F.
Far from what they proposed in F.
Yeah, they were proposing to put this into the index.
Index,
Their
yeah.
suggestion was to only have one index for the image itself, and then modify it from their image originator, and then have a secondary one to fall back with that digest descriptor. We kind of lean toward, we still want that API at some point, and we want that digest descriptor to be pointing to every manifest, not just the top level index. I think the big fear, the reason Docker showed up was because we were going to do a tag per artifact. We're going to have each one of those be a unique tag, and they didn't want to see us hitting the tag API to find all the different artifacts that are pointing to our stuff. And so that was their big concern they came back to us with.
Is there any point, I guess, what can you enlighten me on what the debate was like as far as the array of blobs being an unordered list? I'm not opposed or otherwise. It just seems like a kind of a fun topic a fun rabbit hole to dive down sometimes. But I could see arguments for or against it.
Well, and we allow you to go either way, because it started with Docker saying, hey, we don't want to use the image manifest for pushing our build kit caches. And so they started pushing those up with the index and broke all kinds of registries from that. And their big concern was, they said, hey, the list needs to be ordered if it's an image, and we're not ordered. We're just picking things and choosing them from the list. So from that, I think we're going to make them happy that they support that. And what we've said is, hey, if the media type that you're using on your artifact says that this media type requires that list to be ordered, that's up to you. You're the media type definer there for your artifact type. You can pick and choose how that blob list is supposed to look.
Wouldn't this have implications on pagination though? Or am I conflicting two different object types?
I think two different things. The pagination is going to be for the index of list, and the artifacts itself is the thing you return.
And there's just a max size on the artifacts themselves, right?
We've got that. The manifest itself is supposed to stay less than 4 megabytes. And so if we start getting a whole lot of these artifacts, that would be hitting up to that limit. But I think we're talking about thousands of artifacts on any single image. So that's going to be a pretty extreme case unless somebody's doing something crazy.
People will do something crazy. It's good to have the limit.
They always do.
Likely to do something. I'm probably going to do something crazy with it.
We did call out that'd be nice if people did some garbage collection in there now and then. Leaving that awkward silence for people to think about this for a bit, but also thinking about what next step should be as well. How do we want to take this in terms of making sure that people have the time they want to have to look it over before we hit merge?
Sure. Yeah.
I think probably a few weeks at least is reasonable. And I think it's, it's sort of unfair. We have a lot of maintainers in the group too. So I already hit approve, but I was gonna do that because of 6 months of looking at it. So
You got a head start.
So it's maybe slightly biased after working on it for a while.
one in response to Lachlan's email can say, give it a time frame, maybe a month or something. I don't know.
I feel like 2 weeks to merge and then knowing that it's still not going to be a tag spec change at that point. I think that gives us the flexibility we need from both sides.
Good. They're open tab. They're open tabs for me, so that's good.
I think
Cool. Well,
the value of having the walkthrough, I'm not sure on the distribution and image spec maintainers. It might be worth just putting a call out. I don't know if we want to do another recording, but actually the context that Brandon, if I was reviewing this, having no prior context, that 30 minutes that Brandon just walked through that would probably yield a much faster PR review. That's just the way my brain thinks. But if I'm just looking at this out of like, I have no context and now I'm just looking at a wall of stuff, it might take a little longer. So I don't know if, the folks that are maintainers that are here now could put that call out and say, hey, we can do an ad hoc, office hours for reviewers on the maintainer spec to help, alleviate the process, because sometimes it's daunting if you're a maintainer just getting a wall of PR and having no context.
Yeah.
So
That
I don't
was
know.
absolutely me.
Yeah, so
Without this
Jimmy
call.
can talk now. Was that actually useful? I'm sure if you just reviewed that with no context, it would have taken you hours to get your head around it. And that's not on you. It would take me hours. But just that 30 minutes of the structured walkthrough, I can contextualize what the heck I'm looking at.
Yeah, I did skim this PR already ahead of time and found myself trying to reverse engineer like the intent of the PR from the contents of the changes, which the overview provided a lot of that context. So had I been involved in the working group or been more involved there, it would have been way more obvious. But yeah.
Yeah, and one of the goals of the working group is to bring you like a high fidelity, response back that's united across the folks that were a part of the working group. Is this recorded? I see Tianan. We could just wrap it up. Did we end up getting the recording going, Vincent? I can't remember.
I suspect we did not.
I'm
I
unclear,
can see it in
actually.
the top left. I
Well,
see
that's
the
what some
recording
people
icon.
some people see it and some people don't. I don't see that it's recording. To me, it looks like it needs to be recorded. But when I click record, it's like it needs a moderator. But I can't sign as a moderator right now. It's asking me for like a 2FA, which I.
It says recording for me. It's got to be.
Yeah, so that's
recording.
great. Then even just as you were talking, I was like trying to get signed in on the actual Zoom site because sometimes it'll show me that it's like in progress, so I can get a link faster, and it's prompting me for a code there too. So. It's my lucky day.
Yeah, this has happened across kind of CF ecosystem. They keep flipping on they being Zoom, flipping on MFA, and then you have to go figure out where to get that thing from. Just you're not alone, Vincent, and you haven't gone crazy. So I just want to let you know that we've seen this happen.
Two
in
totally unrelated
places.
points.
But I know when it happened to me, I was like, what? I didn't set up a token. Like if I lost my. But if you can get the recording, I can just update the mailing list and just mention to maintainers, we could just say, hey, we're trying to get a approval within 2 weeks. Here is the recording of the meeting that actually walks through the output of the working group.
Yep. And if it, for some reason, wasn't recorded, I was always happy to talk about it again to anybody that wanted to hear about it. The other part to me is that there is a value for somebody that's looking at this wall of text and saying, I just don't get it. Why is this point over there? They're not going to be the only person to have that question. And so that might be a sign that there's going to be more detail needed to add to certain places. I do also think that it might make sense to have blog posts, other things that are outside of the spec. They're just saying, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what we created. That might be another avenue to get this communicated across outside of the spec.
I think that diagram too should get into the PRs somehow. That's very helpful.
Cool. Well, that was our agenda. So 2 weeks, I think, is what we were saying. I see 2 weeks to 1 month. We're just kind of debating numbers there at that point.
Yep.
But give it some time, give people a chance to review these things. We should probably put that comment in the PRs themselves as well, saying, hey, heads up, you got this much time to review it. And then, yeah, if there's anything wrong with it after the fact, we can always do another PR.
Or yeah, another PR. Yep. Yep. Good. Good job, y'all.
Yeah, great job. Once it's bridge 2, we get to ring the bell and like incentivize all the implementers to be like, hey, look, you're already, you got to get started. It's too late.
Josh, did you already finish off the champagne?
Yeah, Josh is waiting to push the archive on the working group repository once this.
Yeah, you missed champagne on Tuesday. My work day was shot and fruit flies were all over here. I had to evacuate, but
I mean, it might be worth mentioning. So the goal, if this is to be merged, the goal of the initial scope of that working group has been met, and therefore we'd want a motion to wind that working group down. So, as I think the first working group under the OCI,
yep.
We really want to be diligent in, maintaining some process here, and then hopefully the maintainers on the TO and then on the TOB as well see some value in a focused working group, because this has kind of been the vanguard for that model inside the OCI.
And then once we do that and people are free with all the extra time, I've got a new working group to propose. So start a new one up.
You're on your own. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure I am, because not a single person has commented on that one. Actually, maybe Akihiro commented on it, but everybody else is like, nope, not touching it.
I love to watch the recordings of you and Akihiro coming up with that stuff.
Trying to solve immutable tags. Yeah. All right. Well, no other questions. Give you back 15 minutes.
Bye.
Awesome. Good to see you, folks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Amazing work.
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, guys.